Ukraine says its troops have moved further into Russian territory despite denials from Moscow. This video from Ukrainian TV shows troops pulling down the Russian flag in Sudzha, and President Zelensky says they've pushed 1 to 2 kilometres further into Russia just since this morning. Well, by contrast, Russia said today its forces had repelled attempts by Ukrainian mobile units to push deeper into its territory. The governor of the Russian border regions of Belgorod has declared a state of emergency, saying Ukrainian shelling had made the situation there extremely difficult. This map shows just how rapid the advance has been in the past 7 days, with Ukraine claiming to have taken more territory in a week than Russia has all year. Ukraine says it's creating a security zone in Russia's Kursk region in a bid to protect their own border areas. Our correspondent Will Vernon reports.
The Russian military has been busy, making slick videos, apparently showing it's striking back against Ukrainian forces in Kursk. Russia's defense ministry claims the Ukrainian advance has been stopped. But Ukraine's president says his forces march on.
We're expanding our area of active operations in the Kursk region. The commander-in-chief reported that our forces control 74 towns and villages. I thank every soldier and commander that has achieved this.
In Kursk, people queue for handouts of humanitarian aid. Over 100,000 residents are said to have been evacuated. It's a sobering picture of how ordinary Russians are starting to feel the impact of this war. And in Russia's neighbouring Belgorod region, the governor said a state of emergency has been declared due to shelling. The situation is very complicated, said Vyacheslav Gladkov, though no signs yet of an incursion. The aims of Ukraine's offensive aren't yet clear, but the lightning advance of Kiev's troops has shaken the Kremlin and surprised the West.
It's creating a real dilemma for Putin, and we've been in direct contact, constant contact with the Ukrainians. That's all I'm going to say about it while it's active.
The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry says Kiev isn't interested in seizing Russian territory. But Russia is struggling to repel the incursion, now in its 8th day. And Ukrainian forces show no sign of pulling back. Will Vernon, BBC News.
Well, I'm joined by Michael Bossaque, a global affairs analyst and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. What do you think that the point of this incursion into Russian territory is by Ukraine?
Sure. Well, it's becoming more clear day by day, and that is for the Ukrainians to, through military means, which will, evolve into political means, to push Mr. Putin back to the negotiating table, and also to divert Russian manpower and equipment from the front line to the Kursk area. In fact, the Wall Street Journal reported this morning that U.S. officials have confirmed that some Russian forces have been moved. So I think the longer the Ukrainians stay, the more land they seize, the pressure will build on Mr. Putin, and especially when the war comes to the doorsteps of ordinary Russians. But if the Ukrainians succeed further and Mr. Putin is humiliated further, he may end up not at the negotiating table with a seat, but rather on the menu. In other words, the talks will be in Ukraine's favor rather than his.
Is that really likely, given Russia outnumbers Ukraine in terms of its forces? Russia has also said that any likelihood of talks is pushed further back by this. One of our correspondents in the last hour just told me that they don't think there is any sign of any diversion of Russian troops as a result of this. I mean, isn't this potentially counterproductive by Ukraine? Well,
yeah, a couple of points there. I think, the Russians have been showing a very muddled, confusing response. I mean, Mr. Putin is in desperate waters right now, and he's throwing everything at it. The FSB, internal border guards, Rosgvardia, the National Guard, even conscripts. And I think if things continue trending the way they are, Mr. Putin may have to call up another conscription, which is very controversial. Another quick point, if I may, in terms of this war affecting the kind of Russian attitudes as well, if the elites start to get nervous or anxious and start leaving or moving some of their assets out of Russia, that will put additional pressure on Mr. Putin to sue for peace, hopefully, to meet the Ukrainians, at least talk about what they can swap in terms of land and POWs.
Again, is that really likely, given the weakness of Ukraine's overall military force compared with overall Russian strength?
I think over the past months, including when Mr. Prigozhin made his march on Moscow, we saw actually the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses in Russia that no one believed existed. One of your correspondents today pointed out that $170 million was meant to be spent on defenses on the Ukrainian-Russian border in the Kursk region. Ukrainian troops just brushed by that. So I think what we're seeing as part of these weaknesses as well is years of hollowing out of the Ministry of Defense from corruption, and they just don't have the strength that they're believed to have.
Michael Bossack, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.